desktop and stuff like that, you can still get the thing. Yeah, just keep PowerPoint open and just run it from there.
All right.
All right.
Welcome to DPS GCC subrecipient. Before we begin, please note that this is being recorded. Please mute yourself, and if you do not wish to be recorded, please turn off your camera. Good morning. I am Desiree Young. I'm a team lead in the Grant Management Office for Governor's Crime Commission, and I will be your moderator for this session. In this session, we will share information on the progress between GCC, DPS, state agency, and those that are project directors. Throughout the presentation, there will be opportunities for questions and answers. Please feel free to type your questions in the chat box, address them to everyone. Also note that Jason Wimmer is the grants management director. Our grants administrator for the presentation will be Carolyn Locklear and Marilyn Brown. Now I will turn the presentation over to Carolyn.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being a part of the DPS state agencies subrecipients training. The GEM system is the system to use for all things pertaining to providing documentations on your grant, and every one of you should already be registered to use the GEM system. While we know there is a concurrent presentation on the details use of GEMs, we want to make sure that those of you attending this breakout session have familiarity with the GEM system as well. Who needs to have access and how to get it, and what you will do in GEMs and how you will do it. We will be discussing adjustment rules and tips, budget adjustments, match and surplus, as well as non-budgetary adjustments, grant period extension, personnel adjustments, and project adjustments. Budget guidelines. What is a budget adjustment? When is a budget adjustment necessary? When you know you are spending, when you know that your spending needs are changing prior to making a purchase, or once purchases have been purchased, a budget adjustment will be submitted for approval. What is the appropriate reason or examples for budget adjustments? To move money from one project line to another project line, and they must be allowable, applicable, reasonable, and necessary for the sole purpose of the project according to your application. Budget adjustments cannot be done, the final budget adjustment for your project, if your project is ending in September, your final budget adjustment must be submitted 60 days prior to the grant closing, unless there is a problem that you have discussed with your grant manager and it's on a case-by-case situation. Match and surplus. Surplus contains federal share only. When a line is deleted with match attached, match must be met by the end of the project period. If match is not met, federal funds tied to that match will be required to be refunded to GCC.
Hold on 1 second, Carolyn.
Yes, ma'am. And you might be saying, well, Ms. Locklear, we don't have match in the upcoming grants. Match will be waived as well. true. So some of you may have a VAWA grant. VAWA grant match have not been waived as of this point. So the match requirement for VAWA grants still stand. And let's make sure that prior to your grant closing, that your match have been met. Your grant administrator will reach out to you if your match has not been met to see if you have other line items where you can submit for match, or they will inform you of the federal share amount that you must submit to GCC prior to the grant closing, us closing out the grant. Okay, next we will be going to required reporting. If you were in the VOCA breakout session previously, Adonica went over some of these, but I will go over them more in detail. This is a list of the acronyms that we here at GCC uses when we reach out to you. So we want you to know what these acronyms mean when we reach out to you for submitting documentation and reports. Okay, now that your grant is open, you received a notification by GEMS that your grant is open. The next thing, you will receive an introduction email from your grant administrator informing you that your grant is open and now it's time for you to submit your notice of grant implementation, and we call that a NOGI. After your NOGI, and that is due immediately after your grant is open, and this allows you to submit reimbursements. And this is for all grants, whether you have a VOCA, a VAWA, a JJ, or a CJI grant. After that, you also need to submit your initial sub-grant award report. That is also due immediately, and this will allow your grant administrator to go into OVC and start your SAR. The SAR allows you to see that you have a PMT report due. After we have completed part 1 of the SAR in OVC, we will send you an email for you to complete part 2 of the SAR. And then you are to notify your grant administrator when you have completed that so that they can approve the entire SAR because that is required to be completed so that you can submit your PMT report. OJP, OVC performance PMT reports are due quarterly, and they are due 30 days after the end of the quarter to prevent you from going on a GEMS hold. So the first period is due January the 30th, and that is for the periods of October to December. The second period is January to March and is due by April the 30th. The third is April the 1st through June the 30th, and that's due by July the 30th. And July the 1st through September, that's the fourth quarter, and that's due by October 30th. So please make sure that you get your PMT reports in on time and make sure that they are accurate, that the information is accurate in there. If you run into a problem, you can always reach out to the help desk for OVC, and they can help you navigate through the PMT report. For the VAWA reports, you need to make sure that the VAWA reports validate before you upload them into the GEMS system, because if they do not validate, then GCC, your grant administrator, will send it back to you with modifications. And they are due from October through December, and then from January to September. And they are due 30 days after the reporting requirement period. And if you do not have them submitted as well, you will be placed on a GEMS hold. Okay. The next slides that we will be going over will begin with the site visits, and Ms. Marlon Brown will be assisting you with this. Thank you.
Oh. You gotta turn your speaker off.
Sorry, you all. Hold on.
right, there we go. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, late morning. I'm Marlon Brown. I'm one of the new grants administrators here at GCC, and I'm excited to be here and happy to help out with this presentation. We talked about some of this in the plenary this morning in terms of site visit and why it's required and how it's required. And we just wanted to make sure that those of you that are state subrecipients understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. What our director told you this morning about what to expect is that we will be on time, we will be helpful, and that we're there to make sure all of your policies and procedures are in place and are being followed properly. We want to talk to you right now about the who, the what, and the why. So who should be at your site visit? That should be your project director, your finance officer, and any program manager that you have for your actual program to help answer questions that we have as we go through your site visit. The what? It's to review your programmatic processes and your fiscal oversight. Without being able to do that, it helps with being able to do that. It helps us with the why, which is to assure that you're meeting your grant objectives and your fiscal requirements as set forth by DOJ. And for us to better understand your project so that we can provide you with the guidance that you need throughout the period of performance of your grant. This year, we want to say thank you for allowing us to pivot and to be flexible and to do our site visits virtually for those of you that we have visited with. And until we know when COVID-19 is going to be over and the limitations for face-to-face, we may be doing some again virtually next year. We've had the ability for agencies to show us their working space with their cameras as we do either through WebEx or MS Teams or whatever works best for you, even if it's Skype, and to be social distance so that we can meet those guidelines while still meeting the guidelines that we have for monitoring and providing oversight and helpfulness. The ability to visit virtually and to see your funds in use was also very helpful for us this year, and it's also helpful for you as the subrecipients. And it helps us again with the programmatic review and the fiscal review of your documents. I know in the plenary, someone asked the question, how do we see your systems without looking at personal identifying information of your clients and your survivors that you're providing services for? That is easily done with you giving us screenshots or with and blacking out, redacting the information so that we don't see that personally identifying information, but we do see that you have systems in place in order to meet your goals and objectives. So again, thank you for allowing us to pivot and for your flexibility and for letting us come in virtually. And as we go through the process for this coming year, we'll probably be doing it again for a while. So we appreciate your ability to let us do that. And at this time now, I'm going to turn it back to Desiree so that we can start doing some questions and answers.
Okay, thank you. Right now, we do not have any questions in our box. I'll wait a minute or so.
I don't hear you, Desiree, and I don't see any new questions in the chat.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yeah, that's right. I got you.
Okay.
That was a typo in our slide. We apologize for that. They do happen within, they happen once within your 2-year grant period and not annually. So it is a one-time visit and it is one time within your 2-year grant period for your VOCA grants. And as our director said this morning, we also exercise the option if you have a VAWA grant to sometimes monitor you and with the site visit as well. The grants administrator will contact you and give you some dates to let you know when they have availability as to when they can schedule your site visit. And they will give you the option of date and time, and you can respond back and say this date works, that date doesn't work. But, as I said, in terms of who needs to be there, you need to make sure your team is available. And with the, I know I've done a couple where Because everyone is working virtually, it was actually a lot easier to schedule because everyone was in their own space and could fit us into their calendar. They all picked a date and a time. And we do have options. You can either use MS Teams or you can use WebEx or Zoom. So we do have a number of virtual platforms that we do have access to, whichever works best for you and your organization.
What is the participant monitoring reference?
The participant monitoring form is a 14-page form that we as grants administrators will go over with you while we're doing your site visit. There is a section of that is actually the participant monitoring form that we will send to you ahead of time. It's a page, about a page and a half, that you will give us a screenshot, a snapshot of people, of clients that you've been providing services to. And, there are certain questions that DOJ wants to know about how you're providing those services, what services you're providing. And it's just a snapshot. You fill it out and send it back to us. You'll also fill out a attendees form to send us the names of the people on your team that will be at that meeting as well. And then we merge those into the actual site visit monitoring form. All right. Okay. Since we don't have any other questions, and please feel free, as we've said, to type your questions into the chat and to, as we go along. One thing we would like to do at this point is that we would like to ask everyone that is in attendance to put in the name and the contact information for your fiscal officer for your agency, so that we can have a record of that as well. That helps us to kind of get to know other people as you're getting to know us. And we have a point of reference. So I'm going to move into talking about the fiscal responsibility that you have as subgrantees, subrecipients. And there are numerous parties that play a role in the fiscal responsibility of your grant. There's your project director, your finance officer, your fiscal officer and or controller, and then us, your GCC grants administrator. And we'll review the roles and responsibilities of each of these key players so that you kind of know who your go-to people are. The way we look at it is your project director is responsible for execution of the project. They're your overall management of the project and programmatic and fiscal obligations and your budget monitoring. They're responsible for completing required reports, including performance and progress reports. They're our primary point of contact from GCC, and they have the budget knowledge. They're the budget knowledge expert on your grant. And they also complete any budget adjustment in GEMS. When it talks about the primary point of contact, so as a grants administrator at GCC, when we send information or we send questions to your program, your project, we're going to direct that to your project director. And then the project director can sort that, task that out to whomever they feel they need to get the information from. But we will deal directly with the project director in terms of setting the site visit appointments, asking any questions that we have. If you've submitted a reimbursement and there's a question on there, we will go to the project director, and then they may send somebody different back to answer to us, and that's perfectly fine, but the question is coming in through the project director. They are our point of contact as the grants administrator. So the project director is responsible for completing the budget adjustments in GEMS, as well as any required performance or progress reports, as we stated. So they are our go-to person. They're our liaison between your program staff and the GCC grants administrator. The finance officer is your inside person on finance. That's the person on your staff who provides the financial oversight of your project, knows your agency's fiscal financial policies and procedures, and knows the federal financial policies and procedures. So basically, your finance officer should have a strong working knowledge of all things financial that relate to your grant. They should work hand in hand with your project director in terms of answering any questions, and they definitely should be at your site visit. The controller. The controller is your main point of contact for who's responsible for submitting your reimbursements into GEMS, which we'll discuss a little bit later on. and I had already asked this, but I will reiterate it again. I see some of it's coming up. Please take the time to list in the chat the name and contact information of your fiscal officer that actually submits your reimbursement. So, and your controller is going to give you, we're going to go into what they're going to give you in terms of what you will need to submit your reimbursement. At this time, I'm going to go back and see if we have any additional questions and open the line for any live Q&A. I see a lot of people listing. Thank you so much for doing that. It's very helpful for us.
Don't see any additional questions.
Okay, so it says the last session indicated that both progress reports and stop reports were due for VAWA. Is this correct, or did I misunderstand? The last session indicated that both progress reports are due for, okay, for stop and for VAWA. So stop and VAWA both have
Are the same
thing. Yes, stop and VAWA are the same thing. So yes, the progress reports are due for both because they are the same thing. Okay. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit now about reimbursements and documentations as it relates to what you need as a state agency. As we talked about a few minutes ago about how your project director should is your overall oversight person. The one thing is the project director needs to know your budget. You need to know, as a project director, you should know your budget inside and out. And GEMS is your friend. GEMS is your friend when it comes to knowing that. It will allow you to export the budget to Excel and to print it out. And you can filter it so that you can see all of your line items on your budget. Everything should match. It should be the same. It gives you a great level of detail and allowing you to know how much money you have on your line items down to the penny. And what you'll find as you're doing your reimbursements is that your budget, as your reimbursements are being done and paid, your budget will adjust for that. So you'll be able to keep track of that. We talked earlier today in the plenary as well about how to get reimbursed, but I just wanted to go back over the 4 steps to reimbursement. And again, like I just said, your budget is directly related to your reimbursements. So your project directors, you're referencing the budget line items that are approved on the grant for which you're requesting your reimbursements. Always only ask for the budget line items that are approved. If you need to make changes, that's a budget adjustment, and you need to discuss that with your grants administrator. Send your expenditures and your invoices to your controller for the cost categories within your budget that were made during the previous month's reporting month. When the controller processes the reimbursements in GEMS, like I said, you will see the effect in your budget. Again, remember to, in step 3, include your GCC required cover sheet. And we started that process back with the October 1st, 2019 grants. That has not changed. The cover sheet is very important, and it helps us as grants administrators when we're reconciling your reimbursements to actually reconcile to make sure that you haven't missed a document or you haven't included something that you don't have on your cover sheet in terms of you've submitted supporting documentation for something that doesn't correlate to your cover sheet because you didn't really want to be reimbursed for that and you put it in. It gives you a way to reconcile it before it's submitted, and it gives us a way to reconcile what you have submitted. So the cover sheet is very important, and nothing on there should be left blank. If there is a box asking for information, please make sure you fill it out. And the best thing to do with your cover sheet is do not handwrite them because we can't all read each other's handwriting. So it's best that it's typed in dark ink because it has to be scanned and uploaded, and then we print it down and we look at it. And with the handwriting, it can get very foggy and messy, and it doesn't present well for us to do it. And then it requires us to go with a lot of back and forth questions. So it should be a typed document. And again, then you'll submit your reimbursement through GEMS to GCC. Make sure that when you're dealing with your controller, that you're getting the documents that you need. The controller will provide you with a copy of your BD 701, which we'll discuss shortly. They will print invoices and timesheets for you from Beacon. Then they'll send those documents to the project director, and your project director will complete the cover sheets and ensure that the GCC supporting documentation is correct, and send it back to the controller to upload into GEMS. The controller then completes your GEMS reimbursement process. Reimbursements are due on the last day of the month for actual expenditures that were made in the previous month. Please make sure that if you submit on time in GEMS, our grants administrators have a goal to provide first touch within 10 days of your submission. Like I said, if we have any questions, we will email or call your project director and say, hey, something doesn't look right, you're missing a document, can we get that document to go with the cover sheet so that we can reconcile, so that we're not delaying your reimbursement. Our goal is to get the reimbursement received, reviewed, reconciled, and paid out as soon as possible. It is not to hold you up in any way. Because we appreciate the work that you're doing, and you can't do your work without the finances that you're entitled to. DPS Fiscal does not process reimbursements again the last week of any month, so keep that in mind. Final reimbursements are due 45 days after the period of performance is complete, and you can submit that early. And then reimbursements that are submitted and approved by noon on Friday are paid the following Tuesday. And again, that is with the exception of the last week of the month. So please remember that when you're submitting your reimbursements. When your reminders for your controller, we're asking you remember to scan your cover sheets and your backup documents as one file. So if you have cover sheets for personnel, then all of your personnel backup documentation and that cover sheet is one file. If you have supplies, the cover sheet detailing your supplies, the invoices, the proof of payment, all is one file. Any questions or concerns that you have about your budget and accounts payable should be directed to budgets and accounts payable and not the controller. They unfortunately cannot assist you with that. Any issues that you have with your BD 701 should be directed to budgets and accounts payable. Your BD 701 should match your budget that you are working from. And the controllers teams have asked us to remind you all to respond to emails in a timely manner when they have questions so that they are not delaying the processing of any of your reimbursements. So I mentioned the BD 701. And we've found recently that a lot of people are new to the game and they're not familiar with this document. So your BD 701 as a state agency is your proof of payment. As you heard in the plenary today, my colleague talked about showing bank statements and credit card statements. As state agencies, you generally will not have that. So you will have your BD 701. And as you can see from the sample that we have in our PowerPoint, it is a complete line item of your budget. It shows what you have by line, and that is what will show for us when you submit it, that what you've expended from your budget as a state agency. So you'll receive that from the controller, and it will detail all of your monthly expenditures. Again, it is your proof of payment, and it should list the name and same line items that you see in your budget. When you submit your reimbursements for the month, just because you have personnel, supplies, contractual, each of those will have a separate cover sheet with backup documentation. We're asking that you only submit the BD 701 one time because everything is there. So you only need to submit that once, and you can upload that by itself and then have all of your other line items under their cover sheet as an individual documents and files. But you will only need to submit the BD 701 one time. And it is a 2-page document, as you will see from the sample on our on our slide. So I'm going to turn it back over now to Carolyn, and she's going to talk about deadlines and limitations.
Okay. Deadlines and limitations. Standard operating procedures. Okay? You don't need to see. Okay. Okay, so your final budget adjustment, as I stated earlier, your final budget adjustment, if you have a grant that's closing September the 30th, your final budget adjustment is 60 days out. So no later than August the 1st, you will have to review your budget to ensure that if you have any money in the surplus line, you is moving it, allocating it to a line where you can use those funds. And this year we have had to adjust that end date because due to COVID-19. But going forward, please make sure you go over your budget with your financial officer, with your project director, to make sure that the funds that you have in surplus, you will be able to allocate them to other budget line items so that you can use up your funds. Your final reimbursement, once your grant closed in September, you have 45 days to submit your final reimbursement. So that is to ensure that if you have any invoices come in after September the 30th, if your payment has not cleared, you have up until November the 14th to get that final reimbursement in. Contract prior approval. You have 10 days prior to executing a contract to get it approved by your grant administrator. Please, please, please do not wait until the day before the start of the contract to submit the contract to your grant administrator and expect them to turn it around in 24 hours. We have to make sure that it's applicable and allowable with your budget and your application, what you're trying to do with your contractor. We have to make sure that you have those funds in that budget line item, and we have to review everything that you submit to us. So please give us 10 days turnaround time to approve a contract. Also, out-of-state travel, if at all possible, and I know we had some deadlines this year because things got canceled and all that. Out-of-state travel, you need to give us 90 days. You should know 90 days out that a conference is going to be starting and who you need to send. And so you would need to send that out-of-state approval form to your grant administrator and make sure you have, like I stated in the plenary session, the conference name, where it's going to be held, how many attendees you're going to send, the budget costs for the number of people that are going. Need to have all of that on that form and attachments, the agenda for the conference, or list the website on the form so that we don't have to go back and forward with emails asking you for additional documentation to approve your out-of-state travel. Okay, conference limitations. There are limitations to when you have conferences that's $100,000 or less, is 90 days prior to the conference and not exceeding any cost of the cost threshold. And you can find that in 2 CFR Part 200. $1,000, greater than $1,000 or exceed any one cost threshold. That's 120 days prior. And you can find that information in the Department of Justice Grant Financial Guide. Meeting rooms and audio visual services. It's $25 per day per attendee, not to exceed $200,000. Also, $50 or greater attendees per attendees, or $8,750 for logistical planners. For your programmatic planners, greater than $200 per attendees, or $35,000, I'm sorry. Food and beverage is not allowed at all with VOCA funds. refreshments are not allowed, and souvenirs are not allowed. So if you are passing out items, you cannot put your organization or your project name on them. That is classified as a souvenir, and it's not allowable under the DOJ financial guidelines. State hotel rates is $75.10 for in-state, and out-of-state is $88.70. That was for the 2019 and 2000. You can always go on the gsa.gov website and find out what the state rates are currently for 2020, 2021. And if you need to exceed the state rate, you will have to get that approved by your agency's travel policy. Okay, procurement limitations. And you also must follow your own agency procurement policy. This is just a guideline that we are providing you, but you must also go by your state procurement policy or your agency's procurement policies, because I know I have some universities on the line in this workshop. So you have to go by your agency's procurement policies. These are just limitations and guidelines that we have pulled from DOJ. Okay, at this time, are there any questions? I gave you a lot, and you need any clarifications or any questions? Okay, we don't see any in the chat, and so we're going to have Marlon to come back and follow up with some more information for you before we close out.
Okay, thank you, Carolyn. So as I said, we are your go-to people here at GCC, your grants administrator. So as you will see, I know that our director posted our names earlier this morning for you all, but this next slide will show you our names and our contact information, either by email or by our GCC phone numbers. We do have some new members that will be joining our team within the next month. And once they are assigned to specific subrecipients, you will receive an introductory email with their name and contact information on it as well. But right now, this slide is a resource for you to give you everyone that is currently working and that people you are probably assigned to. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. But again, as my other colleague said this morning, our days are packed. And there's one of us and sometimes 25 to 35, 40 of you all in terms of programs, not just the people in your organization. So please remember to show us some grace as we show you some grace, and give us 24 to 48 business hours to get back to you. But we are all working remotely, but we are working and we are here. So please let us know when you need us. Don't hesitate. And, again, everything that is being done today has been recorded and will go up on the GCC website within the next day or two. So you'll have the documents and the resources and the PowerPoints to share with your colleagues who are not able to join us today. And they are good resource documents for you to refer back to should you have questions about, is it allowable, is it applicable, is it something that I can do with my VOCA grant, or is it something I can do with my VALOR grant? This way you have it, and then you can say, I got that from the workshop, but I'm not sure if I'm reading it correctly, and we're here to help you reinterpret it. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us. That's what we're here for, and that's what we enjoy doing. And like I said earlier, we appreciate the work that you're doing across the state, and we want to make sure that you have the financial resources to continue doing that great work. So we have a few minutes left in our time. If there are questions of things that we didn't go over, or that you thought about as we were going over something but you didn't ask, feel free to put it in the chat, and then we'll take a few minutes to answer those questions for you.
This is Desiree, and while we're waiting
to see if anyone does put any questions in the chat, I also wanted to remind you that there is a grants writing workshop that is coming up next Wednesday, September 23rd. We encourage anyone who is looking to apply for more grants, or if you know of partners that you've used in the past who should be applying for grants, encourage them to attend that workshop. It will also be virtual, and it will also be something that anyone is open to attend. And then we're also going to, as I said, these sessions will be posted on our GCC website. And as they mentioned to you this morning as well, we will also be starting to do an LMS training module for you, and you'll receive an invitation and instructions on that, on how to access that. So I have a question here, and it says, are you saying that per diems are not reimbursable?
No.
Per diem is reimbursable, but you must make sure that your per diem follows the guidelines set under GSA. Okay. So if you're going somewhere in another state for a conference, then your per diem cannot exceed what is allowable by the federal government for that area. Okay. You're welcome. All right. I'm not seeing any question traffic here, so I'm going to conclude the workshop. And thank you all so much for your time and participation. And again, you have our contact information, so please, please, please don't hesitate to reach out to us and ask us anything that you need that you may have not thought about or that you did not want to do publicly. Because some people don't like asking them questions out in public. So we're okay with that. So that's why we're here. So thank you all again. Thank you, Desireen, for being our moderator. Carolyn and I appreciate it. And we want to wish you all a good day and that you stay safe and be well.
Thank you both.